Good evening, everyone. I did. Can you hear me? That's so funny. It reminds me of like almost every Zoom conversation. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So also Mahasangha, beautiful to have you with us. Still incredibly miraculous that we can all be here together, literally across the world. I have no idea. I think it's a Zen miracle, probably. And I'm grateful, so grateful to be here with residents and Roshi and this Upaya community. So thank you. I was just thinking as I was looking over my talk about the title, I thought, so the title of my talk is The Diligence of Profound Love. And I thought, oh, would I tune in? Would I choose to tune into a Dharma talk with that name? I'm not sure. However, I think that there's so much to explore here. And what happened for me, and this happens from time to time, is that two words come up together that kind of blow my mind or open my mind up. And maybe a month or so ago, I was delving into Daido Lori's collection, The Art of Just Sitting, because not only were a few residents reading it and commenting about it, but also a few people that serendipitously, a few people that I, have practice interviews with online. So I read one of the essays by Bonnie Myotai Treace called "Will You Sit With Me?" And I read this quote from her essay: "The diligence of profound love doesn't wait for any reward or reciprocation." And there was something about diligence and love together that I thought was intriguing and quite beautiful, partly because, love doesn't come up so much in Zen. And love is what holds Zen. It's like the ground and the heart of our practice. So I love when love comes up, but diligence is just such an edgy word for me. And I started thinking about my connotations, like kind of this harshness with which I thought of the word diligence. So I really started investigating for myself, like why that resonated so much, and in fact resonated as what we do in our practice. So that's what I'd like to talk about. And the essay is actually based on an experience of hers, or draws from an experience about a student of hers who called from the hospital. And this was someone who was in his last days, who she had been supporting and who had been studying with her. And he called and asked her to sit with him through the night. And so she said yes, and sat with him through one of the last nights of his life. And, so one of the things she unfolds, and that unfolds from looking at this combination of diligence as love, is that this is when we show up for love. When we show up for love with our presence, with generosity. And so really taking this up, it seemed to me very clear that diligent love, enacting love with care and precision, seem to describe our path. And I thought too that this teaching of diligent love is helpful right now to a challenge that I almost in every practice conversation comes up, which is, how do we not turn away? How am I to be, with shootings, with war, with our division? I mean, I don't need to go through the list with our, suffering world, with all of it. How can I stay with it, and not be overwhelmed and not turn away and stay connected somehow to our love for the world and not to be lost in despair? And I think this is, kind of like the question of our day. I don't really know anyone for whom that doesn't arise. And I think that practicing diligence in the service of what we love can be an antidote for the despair that comes up for us, and can help us stay present with suffering and feel some sort of efficacy because we're engaged. We're enacting our compassion, our love for the world, and we're doing it with what's in front of us, just here and now, when we're diligently, carefully showing up for what we love. It can be, your fellow residents putting in extra time to cook for the unsheltered, as we do here, and stepping up and joining them. Or it could be a friend who's confused and needs someone to listen, and we listen with an open heart. Or it could be the baby that wakes up for the 4th or 5th time that night, and we pick her up and comfort her, of course, because this is our way of showing up for what we love. And we take this conscientious care of what we love, and then, particularly in our practice, we expand the circle of what and who we love and who we are willing to show up for, I think. And this is our practice. So our dear friend Wendy Johnson has gotten me into the maybe annoying habit of always going to the dictionary. So I was looking at diligence, and it was very interesting because it actually, the definition showed both sides, what I would call both sides of diligence, both the hardworking, industrious, assiduous side, combined with careful and attentive and constant and committed side of diligence. But, the top of the list definition is showing care and conscientiousness. And something that I thought was especially wonderful, given my kind of edginess with the word, is that the origin, tracing back the origin of the word, is from delehide, which is to love or take delight in. So diligence and loving and taking delight in, we hardly equate those things, or I hardly equate those things. Yet if you think of the joy we experience in caring for things, it's a joyful thing to care for things. So if you take diligence, this hardworking, intent, meticulous, without love, diligence without love. What does that look like? And I think that diligence can tip toward being driven, or toward what we think we should do, or what will make us look good, or what will help us get some desired outcome, being driven by some idea of what we should do. If there's not love in the motivation, if it's not carried by love. So diligence without love, tricky. But what about love without diligence? What about love without conscientious care? And when I think in that direction, I think of careless love. I think of the selfishness that can show up in our, what we can call love. And maybe, can there actually be love without diligence, without caring and conscientious action? I'm not sure. It's a good question to kind of live with. Like, what do we mean then by love if it's not kind of backed up and married and held by action and care and conscientiousness? It's a little bit like the question, it was maybe about a year ago that we took up about compassion, So is compassion a feeling? What is compassion without activity, without acting on it? So one of the things to take up in this examining diligent love is, who demonstrates that quality for you? Who can you think of when you think of the way they show up in the world for you or for others? And I think for all of us, there'll be those people or that person who we think, yeah, this person is, it's part of what makes us feel that people are reliable, that they show up for what they love. And I want to bring in a couple ancestors, because in the teachings, this is, there are so many stories about this quality of diligence in showing up for the Dharma. In the sounds, in the fascicle, The Sound of Valley and the Colors of Mountains, Dogen says, there are many examples of the various methods used to transmit the incomparable Buddha way from master to disciple. All of these stories tell us to practice diligently, to do our best and make a strong effort. And, many, many stories. And I'm going to bring up the most outrageous one, just for fun to look at. But, many stories of putting your life on the line, giving it all, offering oneself completely. So to go to the most outrageous, the story of our ancestor Weka whacking off his arm. So we know this story, many of us, of, standing outside the temple, right? Wanting to study with Bodhidharma, or there's many other stories of making this effort to have the privilege of practice, to have the joy of being able to practice with someone. So Weka is waiting through the night in the snow, and Bodhidharma leaves him out there, and he's begging to study with the master, and Bodhidharma says no. And then he says, you could be dissuaded by the merest breeze. Where's the strength of your intention? And so the story goes, Bodhidharma whacks off his arm to prove that he'd do anything to practice. So really? So what? You look at these stories and you kind of go, okay, so what is this telling me really? Are we talking self-sacrifice here? There's other stories like this, like, the Buddha feeding himself, laying down and feeding himself to the tigress so that she doesn't die and she can care for her cubs. I don't think these stories are about violence towards oneself at all, but I think they kind of point beyond what's apparent to show us what dissuades us from showing up completely, and to show us that it's our idea of self, of what this self is, and kind of our constant need to protect ourself, this separate, limited self, to privilege ourself, to, me first. And that in this impulse to protect ourselves, what are we protecting? To help us look deeper into, okay, who is this really? What is this really? And what am I protecting so vigorously? So to quote Myotai from her essay, she says, "Giving to the reality that supports us so completely, there's no need to protect our own agenda. When we can give ourselves openly, completely, we don't need to protect our own agenda." And Mahapajapati, our first woman ancestor, and her acting from her diligent love of the Dharma. So she wants to practice with all her heart. She has her heart set on practicing. And the Buddha says no, as we know, and he turns her down, and he takes off with all his disciples and the cousins, and Mahapajapati puts on the robe and follows, and shaves her head and follows, along with, the legendary 150 other women, and they show up with such determination that they, persuade the Buddha that they have the heart to practice. And in that story, the Buddha says, don't set your heart on this, don't set your heart on practicing. It's not your way as a woman. But she kept her heart set, and her diligent effort followed. And I want to read this one beautiful quote. This is the Mahapajapati's story, is in The Hidden Lamp. And Thanissarya, in talking about this, setting her heart on the Dharma, says, "This is a courageous heart, a knowing heart, depth of intuition heart, beautiful heart, profoundly listening heart, ancient pulse of the earth heart, devoted heart, radical heart, heart that loves all beings." And this is a heart that knows the diligence of profound love. This is what we're talking about. So with practice, through practice, we gain some confidence that we're not limited to comfortable situations, to getting what we want. And it's really important to emphasize, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's not that there's anything wrong with comfortable situations. That's completely not the point. The point is not to be limited. We're not limited to that. We show up for the reality in front of us. And sometimes it's comfortable and sometimes it's not. Myotai says, there's nothing to protect. So we can just take care of what needs taking care of. Just take care of what needs taking care of. So this is where I want to take a time out from feeding yourself to tigers and cutting off your arm, from to say this is not about hardcore Zen. This is not the point of diligent love. It's not about sitting through torturous pain and hurting yourself. It's not about standing out in the snow. It's not about sitting the longest and hardest of anybody in the Sangha. It's not about self-sacrifice. So when it comes to stepping up, check your motivation, you know. This is diligence without love, in other words, you know. Is your motivation to sit through the night, to wholeheartedly practice for yourself and for love of the Dharma? Or is it to be the most gnarly Zen person? You know, it's very important not to tip over in that direction of, you know, hardcore, push myself, no boundaries practice. That's where being upheld in love and acting from love makes a difference. And it's not about going faster than your heart allows you to go, than your gut allows you to go, than your karma even allows you to go, physically or emotionally. It's wholeheartedly showing up for yourself and for all beings, or yourself as all beings, not and all beings. It's about showing care and conscientiousness to yourself and others, and not being dissuaded by the merest breeze, actually, not being dissuaded. So we're talking about, I think, the enactment of Buddha's third noble truth, the cessation of suffering through freedom from having to get what you want, freedom from craving and selfishness and self-centeredness. And then the fourth noble truth of the path, cultivated by right view and right conduct and right effort and so on. Cultivating a generous heart and then just walking in the opposite direction of selfishness, you know, and falling down, but walking in the direction of service. Because we love the world, of conscientiousness, because we care about the climate and we care about each other. Just walking in that direction. And so, you know, we all make a mess and then we get up and walking in that direction. And also, I want to talk about the role of not knowing and bearing witness in this enactment of diligence with love. Because diligence can kind of have this plodding forward, you know, because we think we know what needs to be done and because we're dutiful. And instead, when we have an open attitude of not knowing, we're stepping in, using discernment, trusting, you know, that we're acting from a generous heart and bearing witness and taking appropriate action. So I want to bring in here, I've got a couple more Zen stories. They're classic ones, but they're ones that I love. The story of Hakuin and the baby. The Zen koan, Is That So? So first I'll read the story. Zen Master Hakuin was praised by his neighbors as one living a pure life. A beautiful Japanese girl whose parents owned a food store lived near him, and suddenly, without any warning, her parents discovered she was with child. This made her parents angry. She wouldn't confess who the man was. My parentheses, she was probably terrified of her parents and everybody else. But after much harassment, she named Hakuin as the father. So, furious, her parents went to the master and said, look, how could you have done whatever they said? You're the parent of, you're the cause of this. Is that so? Is all he would say. And after the child was born, it was brought to Hakuin. And by this time, he'd lost his reputation, as you can imagine, which didn't trouble him. But he took very good care of the child. He got milk from his neighbors and everything he needed, and probably got up in the night and took care of the child. A year later, the girl and the young mother couldn't stand it any longer, and so she told her parents the truth, that the real father of the child was a young man who worked in the fish market. And the mother and father of the girl at once went to Hakuin to ask forgiveness, to apologize, and to get the child back. And so he yielded the child, and all he said was, is that so? Not how dare you, not my reputation was ruined, not this is my baby now. This is why this story is really important to me. It's like, imagine. And I can get so self-righteous at the smallest things, or, the smallest accusation, or I don't want, no. This is like a completely open, loving, receptive acceptance of the circumstance that arises. So let me just say, Hakuin is my hero in this story. I love it. But, partly this demonstrates giving up acting out some idea of being something. And even giving up knowing the way forward. I can act, I want to save the world, but I don't know the way forward, so I hold back. Just imagine your life if you didn't act with any motives. You didn't act from motives, but just love. How would you show up? How do you love a baby, an animal that you care for? With attention, not with carelessness. What does diligent love for the world look like? I think just, show up. Messiness. Show up wholeheartedly, just with the ingredients that we have. And, important question, what does diligent love for ourselves look like? For this one? What does constancy and attentiveness in our care for this one look like? it looks like for me right now, going to the doctor, getting a bad report card and going, oh, I'm not walking every day anymore. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not eating the right foods. Get it together and diligently love this one conscientiously. So we'll see. This is my effort. This is my effort. But we, it seems so inconsequential, but it's not. It's showing up for our lives and what needs to be taken care of. This whole interesting work with effort, it's one of the paramitas, and it's confusing, I think, for most of us, because there's this, do you want me to like not sleep? I mean, what does showing up with joyful effort really about, when it's not about pushing ourselves towards some ideal? And I think that effort is one of those things that's always an edge. So, Zen story, what am I on? 4. Zen story 4. An enthusiastic young Zen student sought out his teacher and asked, "Master, if I work hard, how soon can I find Zen?" I hope all of you in this room are asking yourselves this question. How soon can I find Zen? His teacher replied, 10 years. But sir, if I work even harder and apply myself wholeheartedly, 20 years, came the reply. The student persisted, but master, what if I throw myself into practice, immerse myself in it? How long would it take then? Oh, 30 years. The student was crestfallen. Master, I don't understand. Each time I say I'll increase my efforts, you say I'll take longer. Why? What do you think? I wish we could have conversation, but tomorrow we'll have some conversation about this. So why, if I'm trying harder, and the teacher said, when one eye is fixed on the goal, you only have one eye on your path. When one eye is fixed on the goal, you only have one eye on the path. Focus on the effort, not the reward at the end of it. Or the diligence of profound love doesn't wait for any reward or reciprocation. So I want to end with this from Bonnie Myotai Treace's essay. Each moment presents us with the koan of our lives. Each moment, we can waste our time asking for a different koan, or we can just practice. Each moment presents us with the koan of our lives. Each moment. Each moment we can waste our time asking for a different koan, please, or we can just practice. Sometimes in the night, a dying friend asks, will you sit with me? The light is flickering, our heart feels broken, and we recognize with a jolt that the whole universe asks when he asks, will you sit with me? The whole universe asks when he asks. Let's vow to appreciate it. Let's vow to respond. Thank you.